Industrious races find it a great hardship to be idle. It was a masterstroke of English instinct to hallow and begloom Sunday to such an extent that the Englishman unconsciously hankers for this week and workday again as a kind of cleverly devised, cleverly intercalculated fast. What does that mean? Basically, the English in the last couple hundred years has purposely made Sunday boring. And they've done this by closing all the shops, making the transport shut early, making it a day dedicated to church. And I mean, even like modern day, I mean, it's like the gym kind of, the gym community will rest on a Sunday. And they've basically managed to change mass psychology so that everyone kind of just flops about. And he talks about it through the context of, uh, obviously he's kind of a big Nietzsche is a big critique of religion in the way that he a critique is sometimes the best friend in that he kind of critiques in the best possible way. But he references going to church on Sunday being this suppression of the will to power of the working class to keep them um, doing what they normally do and conforming to this mass ideology. And yeah, suppressing the will to power. So yeah, I thought of that and I was like, that's kind of cool. Um, and which I guess for myself, I believe a Sunday is the same day to me as a Thursday, as a Monday. It's all the same. I psychologically approach it the same. And I guess what comes out of this is well, should you believe in a Sunday, in a this day of the week, I'm going to dedicate my day to rest. What is how should we rest as humans? Should we rest when we're told to rest? As an athlete, how do you rest? Um, yeah, that's just a bit of a random point.
Hmm. Well, it is interesting that. Sorry, I'm just finishing my notes here because I do have a point I want to go on to later. But it is interesting that we create these like routines and schedules based on a calendar that is sort of it is a human creation. It is a social construct, the idea of a work week and a weekend. Days are the same for the sun and for trees and stuff. So on one hand, you go, well, maybe it's, yeah, that the way we've curated a Sunday makes us want to go back to work on the Monday, but also you could argue the opposite. People do want that slow day. People do want that rest, and actually it provides them. There was a time in history where weekends weren't a thing. You just worked every day, or you were fucking enslaved. Do you know what I mean? Like we live in a world now where weekends are a mad privilege that we live in. If you're in the agricultural era and you need to like work every single day, 12 to 14, 16 hours a day just to like provide for your family, it's just a different time. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's interesting. There was a time where weekends didn't exist.
Well, no, they didn't. There was just days.
Well, like 500 years ago.
Well, I don't really know the specifics on it, but if you were a peasant in the Middle Ages, you didn't have a weekend. You know what I mean? You didn't have Sunday to relax. You couldn't lie. There was no such thing as a lion. There was just like you got up and there were things to do, and there were always things to do that needed to be
Yeah.
done for you to
I
sort of
suppose
survive.
we can think of weekends as reflection, and we should be maybe privileged in that we have that time to reflect. And I mean, it's also has links to what is it, the God creating the world, and that on the seventh day he kind of just looked at what he created and rested.
Rested, yeah. Well, it's interesting, right? This is the point I was writing down. When I went to Longleat Safari, right, and I'm driving about now, if this, I promise you, this is going somewhere. I'm at Longleat Safari, driving through like the monkey territory, the tiger territory, the wolves and stuff, and you pass by like different deer and antelope and zebras and giraffes and ostriches and all that, right? What was a common theme that I picked up? All the animals are resting. Right? Now, you could argue, of course, that that's because of the environment they're in. They are in captivity, but it's not the same at Longleat as like a zoo. They have these massive wide open spaces to live within. They're not enclosed in a cage where there's a screen where people are staring at them all day. You kind of drive through their territory. Um, so it did have a different vibe. And like, I think when I've gone to zoos in the past, I can see the sort of poor mental health of the animal. Whereas in this place, I didn't get that same energy. But what they were all doing is they were resting and they would get up to eat or like if they were a prey animal, they were just sort of chewing on the grass constantly, just kind of in this very chill, very present flow. And I'm like, if you look at the human animal, we're doing the complete opposite of these guys. We are constantly moving, constantly rushing, constantly working, thinking about how we can improve our productivity, filling our time, squeezing as much like activity into our existence as we can. And you look at our animal counterparts, and they don't have that drive. They'll eat, they'll sleep, and they'll rest, and they'll enjoy the sun. I don't know. It's just there was something interesting about it where I go, we're so separate from animals in many ways, but also we're not. We have a lot of the same sort of basic biological systems as them, and this is how they live their life. It's like when Naval Ravikant said that we should work like a lion, in terms of we do like this big high intensity sprint in a short space of time as your work day, and the rest of the time you're resting, you're recovering, you're reflecting, like you said. So I don't know. That's just something that I thought about a few weeks ago that I'd thought of from what you said.
It reminds me of when you told me about some guy talking about ayahuasca in the podcast, and that no one comes from the ayahuasca trip and says they need to work more.
Yes, that's it. He said no one leaves an ayahuasca retreat saying they need to work harder and be more horrible to people. No one says that. It's always work less, care less about money, love people more. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Whether
I
they
mean,
have a good experience or a bad experience during the retreat as well.
mm. There's some trends in Gen Z that kind of come to mind with this. There's this bed rotting trend, which basically in marketing they're trying to glamorize this lifestyle of staying in bed all day on your phone, and you've kind of got all your comfort things. It's quite prevalent for girls, and there's also a little bit different, but another trend is this nonchalance, this personality of basically not caring about anything. You walk about the world and you kind of you have a very straight face and you're not showing any expression. And when sort of people talk and stuff, and instead of speaking to that person, you're kind of nonchalant. You act like you don't really care, and so you want people to come to you, and you're yeah basically acting like you're the prize this whole time. And so yeah, these two bits of culture are coming together, and I don't like it. I'm quite against it.
There's a middle ground, isn't there, between being like the hyper obsessed workaholic, because no one likes that, but then there's also the other side to it where it's like you just don't do nothing, and then no one likes that either. You know what I mean? To quote Joey Diaz. But there is an in between point. Maybe you call it slow productivity. I've seen that as like a term online, but it's more like for right now. Maybe I'll put it in my own life context. Is so for right now, what's the most important work related thing, or like accomplishment, or like material world pursuit? Most important thing is that I put myself in a position to perform best I can in Brazil in a week's time or 2 weeks' time, whatever. So it's like, well, outside of training, I should be resting. And that doesn't just mean physically resting, it means mentally and spiritually resting. And that's maybe the side of things that the world of sport doesn't really consider. But it's also taking my mind off basketball. The last 3 days, I've been semi thinking about basketball. I've made the odd reference to it. Maybe I've thought about it a few times, but it's not the same as being stuck in it, like fully dialed and focused in, like I'm going to be at camp over the next few days, and then as I'm going to be in 2 weeks in Brazil. I've just been spending like time with my girlfriend, just doing normal human things, and it just being out of that world is kind of like resting from the high intensity, so that when I go back to camp and when I go to the tournament, I can be in a better position. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it reminds me of this small quote that goes, "Many a one attains his full height of character, but his spirit is not adapted to the elevation." And so I think you're quite good at when your character evolves, the spirit follows with it. And so knowing you, you're gonna achieve your worldly success soon in Brazil. And then afterwards, you're gonna go to the seaside with your granddad, and the two kind of catch up to each other. And if you have, and that's how you kind of synchronize the drill sergeant and the Alan Watts.
And it reminds me of something that I maybe did want to talk about on the podcast today, that was made, well, it was consolidated more to me during our like sensory deprivation tank experience on Saturday, um, about remembering the mystery. And that's, the book that I've just given you to read. That's one of the things he says, and it's one of the last chapters. His like final, most simple three bits of advice for people, sort of cutting out all the spiritual and like depth psychology terminology and just kind of trying to really cut the fat off and just give people like the a sentence to remember, because I've remembered it. It's like easy to digest and stick into your brain of how to think about your life. And it's like do the things that need to be done as well as you possibly can. appreciate the ones you love around you and be grateful for them, and remember the mystery. And it's always the last one that kind of interests me most. The previous two, they kind of make sense. It's just logical. Just, appreciate the people around you and try hard at life. But remembering the mystery, remembering that you don't know where you came from and where you're going, that life is this weird, complicated experience that you didn't choose. You kind of just thrust into this location, into this life with this brain and this body and these feelings and these beliefs and these philosophies for what this is about. And you kind of develop this story about who you are and this name that you have and these things that you enjoy doing and this character that you play in the world. But beneath that, all of that, right at the foundation of everything is the mystery. You don't know what you're doing here. You don't know what the purpose of it really is. You don't know who you really are. And remembering that as a kind of spiritual foundation makes everything in life much easier, I think. We talked before about the importance of being the fool archetype from Carl Jung's perspective. And what did we mean by that? Well, we meant by fool, we meant that you didn't need life to go any specific way. You kind of had this playful attitude towards reality. And when you have an understanding beneath everything else that it's just a mystery fundamentally, then it's so much easier to go into things without gripping on so tightly and have that playful attitude.
Mm. Yeah, it reminds me of the Eternal Student. Um, Tell me about the past is not dead.
Yeah, so this is a point that I made some notes on last week. So I just want to drag it back up so I'm sort of refamiliarize myself with it. But it's another point from the James Hollis Jungian psychology book about the past. He just has this line where he was like, the past is not dead because it remains so formative because so much from the past holds with us psychologically and informs how we interact with the present. So the way he puts it is when you go through some kind of experience in your past as a child or even in your adulthood that creates what he calls like psychic conflict. So like your ego is found out or you've been hurt emotionally by somebody significant or you have some kind of existential crisis, a kind of crisis of self. You realize you're going on the wrong path or you don't like who you are or anything like this. That creates like a complex. And the way he defines complex is like just a bundle of psychic energy that's connected with that memory, right? And the complex then informs your beliefs about how the world is. So let's say, I don't know, let's say in school, maybe you're in year three or whatever, and somebody bullies you. Okay, well, I'm just literally just plucking a random example out of obscurity here off the top of my head. But let's say somebody bullies you and about the way you look, say, right? That is going to create a psychic conflict that your ego doesn't want to admit that you've sort of, I don't know, been, what's the right word? That you've been hurt by this person, you've been downplayed by this person has treated you like you're nothing, right? That you kind of had a loss of self-worth in that situation. And that will then become this complex, this kind of psychic energy, this conflict, this disquiet in the sort in your mind. That will then inform your beliefs later down the line. And you might absorb the beliefs of the person that bullied you, but then what I'm saying is it informs how you think about decisions later down the line. Your confidence going into new social situations, your confidence going for that job, or whether it's public speaking or interacting with new people, the energy of an experience in the past kind of possesses you psychologically. And this doesn't happen consciously, not at all. Like let me put it in maybe better ways to put it in my real world example. I really struggled with confidence over the last 3 years in like elite sporting environments. And I think it's because of, experiences I had when I was like 13 when no one thought I was good, not even myself. And I kind of embodied that energy, that kind of like feeling insufficient. That was a complex in me that then when I went into sporting environments, even when I was physically good enough and I had the skills to compete, I still felt insufficient. And so this is what he means by the past is not dead, because unless you process and analyze and really pick apart where your feelings come from in situations and never really look at your memories and look at the story of your life like this, then you do get possessed by emotions and experiences from the past. I mean, he says that ghosts are real, but not in the way people think of them. Spirits don't physically exist like in Harry Potter when they're floating around the Great Hall. He means you're possessed by parts of your past, by ghosts from your past, ghost experiences, ghost people, ghost emotions that then influence your present. So that was a lot of waffle, but that's what I meant by that point.
No, I like it. I think it's it's almost one of the first like difficult things in life to kind of confront is how do I start to take my first bit of agency and accept that I'm not gonna be a puppeteer of my past and that I'm not going to go the direction of the wake of the ship. And it, in reality, I don't see a lot of it. I don't think most people do change. There's, I don't know if it's relevant, but what also comes to mind is you were talking. I remember you saying like how in Harry Potter, Voldemort has these. I can't remember what the word was like.
Horcruxes.
Horcruxes. That's it. Is that a part of it?
Well, I love J.K. Rowling's idea of the Horcrux because it's basically like a fragment of your soul that's embodied in a physical object that's outside of you. So like for me, one of my Horcruxes might be like a basketball or I don't know, like a psychology book, one of the earliest sort of books that I read, or like I don't know, what else would there be for me? I don't know, the brain. I don't know, the brain sounds like a shit example, but I don't know, some kind of diagram, some kind of theory. Um, or like a pen or like a journal, which I've put so much of myself into. It's like we invest in an object so much that a part of our soul is put into it, or it's so aligned with our character and who we are that it's like almost a part of us, if that makes sense. Which is different to what I was talking about, but also like a cool idea in itself. But what I wrote down here as you were talking about that sort of like, do people ever do this kind of work and recognize it? And I think the tough thing is that emotion and sensation come first. So like when I'm, I don't know, 18, 2 years ago, going to like my first under 22 camp or something, I'm nervous and feel that anxiety and feel those butterflies in my stomach and my sort of body goes all tight and I can't play with like freedom and flow. That feeling comes first. Like I don't have the opportunity to like think my way out of it and be like, you don't have to feel this way. It's like it hits you immediately. It's automatic. And that's why it feels like you're possessed by something from the past, an experience from the past, a belief, a philosophy. And that's why I like that theory because it makes sense in terms of how our uncomfortable emotions feel. And it's only over time and afterwards, I guess, in reflection, when you can pick apart why you think you felt the way you did and kind of try and alter it.
Yeah, this actually fits quite nicely because we had a DM from someone called Samuel who asked, how do you stay true to yourself and be confident in your choices?" Very kind of, he sent me a big paragraph and I was trying to understand what he was saying and that kind of what came down to it. And to answer this question myself, I actually think if you're caring what people think about you, especially to an unhealthy extent, if that's your biggest problem, then I don't think your problems are big enough.
Mm,
Because like, if you're I mean, when did I stop caring about what people think? Well, when my life got harder and I had to go through some uh like huge financial stress and struggle and like if you're dead broke, then caring about what other people think of you is like number 70 on the list. And
mm.
that's why I I've kind of had that spirit a little bit of having nothing to lose because I've already had that tough period, and a lot of these entrepreneurial guys, what we all go through. So I would basically say that you don't have big enough problems, and then I'd say that you want to ask bigger questions about yourself to try and create this larger life. How do you be confident in your choices is a bit more like I don't think you fully can. I just think you have to use the information that you have at that time and also embed that with a bit of your life philosophy, like how much risk tolerance do you want? How much risk do you want to take? And I think that's down to the individual.
It's interesting that we both have our own individual perspective on how we'd answer that question. Not that I think yours is wrong, because I don't in any means. I think the idea of asking a bigger question is good advice. Like
Mm.
do something that's like difficult but also meaningful enough that other people's opinions don't matter. That's a good point. But how I would answer it is any time that you look outside of yourself for approval or validation, you've gone drastically wrong. You know, Carl Jung said, those who look outside dream, those who look inside awaken. The answers to being true to yourself, which is the phrase that this guy has used, are actually in you. Because being true to yourself means living truthfully with what yourself wants and desires and believes, right? not other people, not your parents, not the material world, not the education system, not bloody like what social media is trying to shove into your skull. What's inside? And so, number one, that's how you be true to yourself is what, rather than thinking, and this is James Hollis's idea, rather than thinking, what does the world want from me? Think of what is it inside me that desires to be manifested in the world. That's a fucking great shift. That's a fucking great shift. It's not then what does that this friendship group at school or what does my mum want me to do or what do I need to do to get a job so I can buy a house and buy a car or whatever that kind of bullshit. It's what feels like it will lead to a good life inside me and then go and do that. What part of you, part of your skill set and your natural inclinations and your interests wants to be invested in from within? And that is what you mean by being true to yourself. And then it links so well into the next part of the question of how do you be confident with your choices? It's like if you've used that internal compass to make your decision, it's the right decision. If it's true to you internally, it's right. If you're looking out there, then there's always going to be uncertainty because you don't know if you can trust the forces outside of you. The only thing you know you can truly trust is that like intuition. And I feel like the same intuition that, some animals know the exact plant to eat when they have a certain illness. They're not reading books, they're not talking to a doctor. They just have this primal, instinctual knowing about what's right. And the way that, how birds know when to migrate when there's changes in the weather and things like this. Animals have this connection to nature and their instincts that we seem to be disconnected from as humans, but I think it's still possible. There is this intuition. And from my own experience in life, decision I've made, if they feel in line with something core to me, and I'm quiet enough and mindful enough to listen to that voice, and that voice agrees, then I am confident in that choice, and there is no going back because I have to trust it because it does feel like the true me. So that's how I would answer that question.
Question on the same lines was from Noah. He sent this. Hey, I've really been enjoying the podcast lately. The topics always get me thinking. I had an idea for a future episode that I thought might fit the vibe. Is authenticity possible in a world full of constant performance? With social media, curated ideas, and even the way we present ourselves in relationships or work, it seems like we're always performing to some extent. Can we ever be truly authentic? Or is that just another performance too? Credit goes Credit for the idea goes to Joel's intellect. He's always throwing out these mind-bending thoughts. Thanks for great content. Looking forward to the next episode.
No, I like Noah. He sounds cool.
I guess one of the interesting points he makes is, well, is being truly authentic, is that a performance in itself? Anyway, and I think so. I think so because you're still kind of constructing that based on your more uh, accurate, soulful ideologies that you want to present yourself. Like you're still performing, even if it's kind of to your own script or your own. It's just your own script. It's not someone else's script. It's just your own
Maybe
script. It's your own mask.
maybe a way of thinking about it is it's still a performance. It's still a dance, right? As life should be. Life should be a dance, but you're dancing to the right piece of music. Or finally, you start hearing the music to then dance the right sort of set of movements. Like I feel like if you're trying to be someone you're not, you're kind of just dancing off beat. It's kind of like watching somebody that's doing like some shit weird dance move that's off the rhythm of the song. It just doesn't look right or feel right. And you can recognize that in people. You know when somebody's being inauthentic if you have a sense of self-awareness. Um, and so maybe being authentic is when the music feels right. And then like that, I think is it a Nietzsche quote you told me about where it's like those that laugh at people dancing are the same people that just can't hear the music. It's like once you hear your own song and you're dancing along to it, even if it's still a performance, it's like a performance that feels right. And so you don't mind how it's interpreted by others, if that makes sense. Like, of course,
Mhm.
right, Joel Clifton is a performance in many ways, but the performance that feels right is to me what is the authentic one. If it's a
And you think
performance that feels forced, then it's inauthentic.
and you think it's possible to truly be Joel Clifton?
Well, Joel Clifton's not real. Like we've been through this, I think, in previous episodes. I mean, it's not. That's not. That's the label that's been put on me by the world. And I know, oh, I can just fucking visualize them now, the fucking Instagram comments, if that's like clipped up, you know what I mean? But read The Denial of Death by Ernest Becker. Read that the fallibility of the self and his ideas about how we have to construct an idea of who we are to protect ourselves against the complexity of reality. That is what I mean when I say the statement Joel Clifton isn't real. And that in isolation, yes, of course it sounds stupid, of course. But it's like that's just the name that was put on me as a baby. That's not what I am. I'm the life force that's animating this body and that is aware of this life. That's what I am. And so you say, is Joel Clifton's performance? Well, yes, he is. But there's parts of being Joel Clifton that's so beautiful that I get to go out in the world and perform and be this character.
Yeah, it's interesting that you said the we it protects us against the complexity of reality because you would need some kind of performance.
Yeah.
You, if you're just kind of scattered about this day, I mean, you kind of want to be unpredictable. That's kind of an advantage that it would be good to have, but you basically just can't do everything. You can't be, otherwise you're like spreading yourself too thin between lots of different kind of characters. And I think it is best to be one and have depth of character. That's why I
Think
think it's
about it
good.
this way, Jake. You're thrust into the world, right? And suddenly you're a being, a mortal being in an infinite universe, and you're aware of that. You're profoundly aware of that as a human being, and you're the only animal that knows it, right? So you are immediately struck with questions, and I don't mean immediately like when you're 2 years old. I mean when you sort of get older and actually take a moment to look around you and go, what the fuck's going on? You're hit with questions like, who am I? What matters? What is this world? What's the point in it anyway? Right? And maybe you're lucky enough to not be concerned with questions like that. But if you have minds like me and you, and the kind of people that will listen to a podcast like this, you do ask those questions. And so the way you deal with that is you construct an identity and a self, right? You connect to the name you're given, you connect to the color of your skin and like where you grew up and what you're interested in and your your school you come from and then the job you do, and we attach ourselves, ego attachments to all these worldly identities. But that's useful because it kind of tunnels us off from the complexity and the reality that we are just this tiny finite being in such an infinite world. And then that allows us, it's like the self is functional to allow us to live life without being fucking crushed by the weight of our existence every 5 seconds. And that's what, that when I say things like Joel Clifton isn't real, that's what I mean. And if people, want to go and read the books that I've read that have allowed me, that have led me to those thoughts, then go for it because it's really bloody interesting. And it allows you actually to breathe a sigh of relief. Because then I go, well, it actually doesn't matter what I achieve that much out in the world because it's not like I don't have to hold on to that shit. It's like a life is play. It's a dance. It's just this thing we get to do. It's like I remember Alan Watts talking about how being a human is like being thrown off a cliff, right? You're born and suddenly you're thrust off and you're falling constantly towards your death because time is ticking and eventually we are mortal. We will die. So it's this falling through this like almost constant pit until suddenly you will crash and your life will end. And he describes being attached to life as like trying to grab onto the things around you that are falling with you. But the reality is everything's falling too. So there's no point in trying to hold on to something because just like you, it's going to crash down at death. So realizing that you're not the things that you attach yourself to, you're not the identity, you're not the ego attachments, allows you to just fall and enjoy like the wind rushing through your hair as you're sort of skydiving through this beautiful existence that life can be. So I know that sounds quite woo-woo, but I think I've actually fleshed that out quite well because that's what makes sense to me.
So this spiritual achievement of kind of having no self or having a dissolution of your ego, that would kind of tie into this and being that you would have a, I mean, your performance, how would that affect your performance? Uh, if you have no self, like, I guess you don't see yourself as like a main character anymore in a way. I don't know.
Well, you see it for what it is. It's like there's no longer existential pressure on everything you do. That's how I feel anyway. Like maybe
Mm.
it's people might call me a bit more detached from my life than I should be, but like I don't really like the things I do for the sake of doing them. I don't do it to like achieve something in the material world so that everyone can respect me and applaud me. Like because that stuff doesn't matter to me anymore. I enjoy the process. I enjoy the mastery of an art form. Like winning a basketball game it feels nicer in the moment. Neurochemically, I'll probably get a greater release of dopamine. when we win a game. But like what I love about sport is the craft of getting good at it. And that's what I think has led me to perform well compared to some of my competitors because I do see it that way. I love the art of trying to improve. I'm not attached to winning or medals or individual accolades. It's just not just doesn't it doesn't do it for me anymore. I'm more connected to I guess what's underneath Joel Clifton, which is the thing that wants to just have a meaningful experience in the present moment.
I'm gonna pivot a little bit.
Go for it.
Um, Finn wants to know, what's your opinion on the human appendix? I don't really know much about this apart from that we don't need the appendix anymore, but I don't really know why. I feel like it's something you would know.
I think it's something to do with when we were less evolved, like we were more like our great ape ancestors, and we were eating like loads of like plants that we couldn't digest, and the appendix played some role in digesting plant tissue that now we don't need because of our modern diets. And I had mine removed a few years ago when I got appendicitis. In some people, it gets really inflamed and infected, and it can kill you. But yeah, that's what it's for. I think. Let me Google that and check. Um, I think I'm right.
I think it's something towards diet that now we have such a varied diet that we don't need it anymore.
So, so apparently it has some like potential immune um stuff, but it has no known vital function. Yeah.
Wait, do I still have my appendix then?
If you haven't had it removed, then yeah. But the funny thing about an appendix is at any point in your life it can just get inflamed and infected and lead to appendicitis and you have to get it removed. It's just always there, just
Oh,
like a ticking bomb. At any point it could just go.
it's just a bad part of like when God designed us, he kind of made a little mistake with that.
Well, no, it was used at one point, I think, in our evolutionary past. I believe so. Yeah.
And so, what's your opinion on it?
Um, haven't got one really. Just there. I was annoyed when mine went mad. Um, and then I got it removed and I haven't missed it since. So yeah.
Um, Sam wants to know, different Sam to the first guy. What what's your opinion on the psychology of radicalism? So people that feel alienated and disconnected from the society, and they join these kind of marginalized groups with like more extreme worldviews.
I think it's a manifestation of our desire for connection. And when that isn't met, we look to dangerous and extreme places for it. You know, a lot of our a lot of things like that, politically, socially, when people can adopt extremist, unhealthy belief systems, you wouldn't be in that situation if you were loved and nurtured and fulfilled and spiritually whole. You're always trying to fill some kind of internal void through doing those things. So my opinion on it is I have empathy for these people. I don't think we should hate them or shame them. They're looking for connection. And when you find a group of people that seem to have similar views to you and accept you as one of them, well that's a kind of pseudo like connection, something that's attempting to be real, true love and acceptance and connection that we're looking for in our kind of relationships and our connection with reality and nature. And it kind of pretends to be that, it masquerades as that, and really you're just yeah, you're being radicalized. Um,
I get
Go on.
I get the disconnected type of thing. It's like with this, it's a bit overwhelming, isn't it? Just being in the city and watching everyone and thinking, I don't really connect to you guys. Like, what are we all doing? Where are we all going? And you're kind of with your own brain trying to figure this complexity out, and everyone seems to have their life together and is rushing to do so. And yeah, there is a kind of when you're watching those people in the city, like you don't get someone come to you and you think like and say like, oh, this is quite mad, and that you're just kind of there like alone. It's kind of like it's like it's not loneliness, but it's like a type of loneliness maybe. You're
Well,
lonely in a crowd of people.
the,
That's a
the
yeah.
problem is we don't see them as people, right? When let's say, and this is what's so interesting about perception, right? Let's say you're in the tube station and you're trying to get from A to B, right? You're getting on the whatever, the Jubilee line or whatever. But the way perception works is it's based on your goal and your beliefs in a situation. So let's say I'm trying to get from wherever to wherever. My goal is just get to the right platform and get on that tube or that train. So all the people going past me, I don't process them consciously as people, as individual human beings with their own lives and their own experiences and their own emotions and their own pains and pleasures and ecstasies. I just like going like these are just kind of obstacles in my path that I need to get past so I can get to the ticket gate and then go through and get to my platform. That's the problem. When you see those people in the city, you don't really take in that these are other people. They're just like they're kind of just parts of the environment, aren't they? It's only when you take a second and be mindful and go, that's a human being, that you get this feeling of sonder that we talked about before. That's like the feeling when you come to terms with the fact that there's loads and loads of people around you living their own individual experience that you'll have no idea about. So there's two sides of that spectrum. But yeah, we don't. It's almost like we don't see them. We don't take them in.
Yeah, that's kind of what I get to with talking about like what's real because the people on the tube, they're not significant. They're not like the way that you said it is so well put is the people on the tube, we don't see them as human beings. They're just a means to an end. And therefore they're not that real. What's real is what you're listening on your headphones. And because you you're sort of daydreaming in your own zone and they're not even consciously around. So, I mean, is that a problem? What do we do about it? I don't know. I don't know if it can change. We can be mindful, I guess, and
It's
we can
like
maybe to one of them.
yeah, it's this goal perception thing that was one. It's probably one of the biggest like theory or not theory, it's biggest phenomena that kind of floored me when I learned about it in psychology because when you go to a coffee shop or you go to a supermarket and you're with the checkout, you don't see the person. You don't. You see you see someone that needs to like beep your shopping along that you'll then give your currency to so you can get your groceries. Like you don't see like Paula who's 46 that works in Sainsbury's and she's married to a guy called Dave and she really enjoys watching cricket and she likes white wine and she like her favorite food is lasagna. Like you don't see the person, do you? You don't see their individual likes and dislikes and that they have a history and have a future and you don't. You just see you see a bot, an NPC that you just go and like bip your card on the scanner and say, have a nice day. Because your perception in that situation is not to get to know the person, not to connect with them, not to realize, who they are and make them validated and noticed. No, you just want your groceries. And that's okay. I'm not sort of shitting on that because we need that to function as society. If every time we had a basic interaction, we had to like stop and have a deep, meaningful conversation with somebody, we wouldn't be able to like do it. But it's just how it works.
When you're going for your groceries, you just need to be mindful that that person who's scanning your groceries might be going through a divorce. And
Yeah. Or anything like that. I think a nice little thing you can do that I try and do is if you see somebody's got a name badge on, refer to them by their name. Like, hi, so and so, how are you? Doesn't have to be anything, but like just be how like I reckon you can work a whole day in a job like that and no one even like notices your name. So I think doing that is just a nice little thing to do.
didn't you do that once when you were Julia and you were trying to get through somewhere and in a gate and you
Yeah.
weren't really allowed to be there?
Yeah, so
Remind me
no,
of that.
it was so like, I'm a wheelchair user, right? So if I go somewhere with a friend, I try and get them in as my carer, you know what I mean? Because then you don't have to pay for a ticket. Should I be revealing this on the internet? I don't know. But anyway, here we are. And I was like, I don't really have any proof of disability. I do have cerebral palsy. I could walk across the room and someone would probably find it quite obvious that I have a disability. But like if they ask me for like proof of disability, I couldn't really provide that. I don't have any medical notes on me. So like you just got to be friendly and be like, hi, whatever your name is, how your day's going well. Can I have one disability ticket and one carer? And I don't know, there was something about it, just the fact I'd used the name. She was like, you're pretty sound, I'll let you through. But that could be bullshit and I'm just pretending to myself that I'm making a difference. Maybe I'm not, maybe I'm a twat. But yeah, it worked.
No, she didn't she?
You what?
She loved it, didn't she? You're trying to get into some like film place, wasn't it?
It was Windsor Castle. Yeah.
Right.
I think the general point is just be friendly and see what happens. Because you might be friendly and nothing opens up for you and you don't get any greater benefit. But it's definitely not going to be better if you're grumpy. There's a guarantee on that. It might be better for you if you're friendly, and I think there's a good chance it will be.
Okay. Yeah. I didn't write who this question was by, so sorry to whoever this was. Have you guys ever thought about discussing the ethics of eating meat? I remember you mentioning what if a spider could talk? It'd be different. Well, what if a pig could talk? So what comes to mind straight away for me is there is something very interesting in how we've taken an animal, we put it into a different context, and now we go from loving it and to killing it. So this would be in countries like in India, they worship cows, whereas we mass slaughter them in the UK. You've got, the Chinese eating dogs, whereas we love our dogs in the UK. You've got snails being eaten in France,
Mm.
where I mean, we just kind of crush them. And
No, we don't.
in
Well, I
the
don't,
UK.
but yeah.
No, I try not to. I try not to. I don't even know how. Do they mass produce snails in France? Do they have like,
Snail breeding
kind of,
centers,
kind
heard
of
of
like
it.
they do? Yeah, kind of like they do cows, and they just kind of like eat grass and mass breed them. Um, but
These are the real questions.
yeah, I guess that's the first question that comes from it. What's kind of going on with the ethics of putting something in a different context, and now we want to kill it?
It's one of those things that it's such a horrible situation that I just hate thinking about it, but I think it's important for sure. And your point is so right, we change the context of a situation and how we feel about it just massively alters. Um, you'd probably most people would go to a little farm and see a piglet and think, oh, that's really cute. But then that morning you probably ate bacon. So it's like there's this no, but it is, isn't it? There's this like there's this intrinsic hypocrisy to the fact that we eat so much meat. And I was a vegan for a year and a half, but I didn't feel very good on the diet, and it was sort of I lost a lot of weight. And being an athlete, I do perform better when I have like loads of eggs in my diet and stuff. I think the problem is, right, no one in their right mind agrees with factory farming. It's terrible. It is the mass slaughter and abuse of beings, of alive, or, live conscious animals is just it's disgusting. And so when I do buy shitty meat from supermarkets and stuff, I'm contributing to that fucking disastrous situation, and it's horrible. Um, but do I think eating meat as a practice is immoral? Well, no, because primal man would have done that in the wild to survive. We were predators. We were prey for sure for many creatures. We were their prey, but we were definitely predators to others. And so, just like any other fragment of the food chain, it's a part of nature that we did hunt and we did eat animals. But do I think fucking packaging it in a supermarket and injecting it with steroids and it's just oh Jake, it's horrible. It's horrible. It's not a nice part of life. And so that'd be my perspective on it. I'm a meat eater,
Yeah,
but as soon as if I'm lucky enough to be in a financial position where I can eat like high quality or I know where the meat's coming from, then I will. Um, but it's one of those ones that just there is no real nice right answer to it.
yeah. When I get in the supermarket, I see these like 12 pack of bacon for like really cheap.
Mm.
I'm like, that's not right.
No, that's
I
flesh for being. You know what I'm saying?
yeah, I have to go for the six pack. That's a bit more expensive and it's better quality, and it's better quality because I don't feel like that 12 pack. It can't be that cheap and that much more value and be those pigs be in good condition.
Well,
Um,
there's a phrase, isn't there? There's no such thing as a free lunch. And what that and isn't that that's links to a law in Robert Greene's 48 Laws of Power as well, was it? Like
yeah.
reject the free lunch or despise the free lunch or whatever. It just basically means if something's cheap, then there's been they've cut corners somewhere or the cost is going to be inflicted on you, on your health, or there was, it was somebody along the production process hasn't been paid in a moral way. And so it's not cheap, it's not free because someone has taken the cost somewhere along the line, whether that's you or someone early on or a corrupt way that company's gone about their production. It's just something's off about it.
Why did you become a vegan initially?
I watched two Netflix documentaries. I watched
Uh,
I watched what was it called? I watched The Game Changers and I watched Cowspiracy.
that's how a lot of I think vegan starters watching one of those.
And I was in
Um,
lockdown and I had so much time on my hands to make salads. So
so to hit you like, oh shit.
I probably ate healthier. Like I ate loads of it, like loads of good vegetables back then. I was proper on it, but I wasn't right mentally. That was when I was in my sort of like OCD obsessive days and things weren't right. And it was a consequence of that. I think I had a sort of bit of overly healthy eating disorder type vibes. But yeah, an interesting
I was
experience to go through.
I also have written here the fact that like in France, like they eat snails and in England when really we wouldn't really touch them is like it's a good metaphor for Well, even if loads of people, there'll always be someone that wants your product or wants what you're offering. Like this is why on the internet people are selling their piss and just ridiculous stuff because there's always a consumer. It's just like there's such a big contrast to people who would hate to ever do something and then people that would love it and it's rare and it's like there'll always be an audience like for whatever that will consume whatever you even like personally whatever your sort of gift is to the world and the way that you think there'll always be an audience of people like you.
Yeah, you just have to find them. I mean, that's why Naval Ravikant's so wise, isn't he? Where he says like authenticity is one of the best ways to achieve wealth, is because you are the only person that can do and sell your own interests, your unique cocktail of skills and interests and attributes and characteristics. And so there will be a handful of people out there in the bloody 8 billion people on Earth that are like you and find what you do interesting and want to invest in it. You just have to express what you are and who you are in the world as much as possible until you find those people. And along the way, you're going to have people mocking you and finding it weird because they just don't get it. They're resonating on a different frequency. They're just living on a different vibration. But once you do find the right group, then you're laughing.
Few people have asked the same sort of question, but basically it's A levels right now, and it's sort of I think it's most people are doing sort of more. My sister's doing her GCSEs and it's like sort of the second leg of it, and having done very well in both the GCSEs and your A levels, the guy called Ollie particularly wants some kind of study routine advice, some practical advice, and there's also there's also some people asking, do you have proof that you got three A stars? Like, or you just saying on the internet? But yeah, but generally, if you have anything to sort of comment on this topic.
Well, number one, I feel no need to express proof. Like, if people are that interested, then I can fucking like send a photo of my A-level results that are literally in a shoebox up on that shelf. But like, I'm not
How
gonna do
can you
that.
do that?
I'm not gonna do that because it's just like contributing to the fucking ego-ness of all of it. You know what I mean? It's just like, oh, like going back. If I could go back in time, I would not have said. I mean, it's just the tone of it is so bad. Like, I feel like what I was trying to say in that clip was like, people were like jealous or whatever of my like results in tests and stuff, but I don't want them to be because I'm like, guys, you don't realize like you're going to like house parties and having a great time with your friendship group. I'm fucking like riddled with social anxiety, and like this is my way of getting my self-esteem. So like just let me be. Like that's why I never like that clip about me saying I was the guy. The tone I'm used, I look at myself and go, "You're such a dickhead." No, but do you know what I mean? I look like a dickhead. Anyway, let's go back to his question because, it's I guess it's interesting and relevant for people. But I would say, um,
So
to
study.
read Deep Work by Cal Newport. Well, actually, it might be too late for that now. It's too late for you to read a book to then change your study routine. But
Yeah, people are cramming right now.
what changed everything for me was reading that book. And I'll summarize what I gained from that. So that was the main principle was intensity of work is so much more important than duration. He put it as like a formula. He was like work should be not defined as equal. Well, it shouldn't work should not be equal to number of hours worked. That's stupid. He said it should be work equals number of hours worked multiplied by intensity. And intensity is like how much you're focused and how much you're doing the right task. And it's kind of like a term called deliberate practice. You might have heard of it in other books, like working on the stuff that actually moves the needle. So like
Mm.
when I was doing A-level psychology, for example, and there might be people listening or like looking at this clip online that are currently doing that, I would only revise the big mark questions, the 16 mark questions, because I knew that if I learned a 16 mark answer to every topic, then all the little like 2 markers, 4 markers, 8 markers for each topic I could also answer because I had that big chunk of content. So whenever I revised, all I did was do 16 markers and I just made sure I had like an AO1 paragraph that I could write and three AO3 points. And that'll make sense to people doing AQA psychology for every topic, right? And I just learned those. I have to caveat with this with the fact that I have like photographic memory, so I would just write them out a few times and it would kind of be in there. But that I would say, like, do the hard stuff that other people aren't doing. Don't be making flashcards that look fancy. Don't be highlighting shit. Like that's gonna do fuck all. Actually, like, do practice exam questions. Like, learn the stuff. Like, write it all out. Like, look at your content, then try and write it out or speak it verbatim without looking at it. Like, draw it out of your memory because memory's consolidated better by drawing out of your brain than putting more back in. And then also, I just say make a routine of it. work like a lion, do 2 hours of really intense focus study, and then just relax the rest of the day. I mean, actually, that's probably shit advice for now because we're deep in exam time. But like I was doing revision across the year. Um, but yeah, that's be what I suggest. And I think also a third bit of really important advice was by the time you get to your exam, like make sure you just sleep well the night before. Don't be stupid. Don't be cramming till 1 a.m. Like just go to bed, get a good sleep, wake up in the morning, don't stress. Like if you go in stressed, you've probably failed from the start, to be honest. Like you have to be confident enough that you can do it. And I guess that comes from doing the work previously, but that's what helped me so much is because I was just so chill. Like people were in the waiting room going to the exam, like cramming, reading notes and stuff, and I'm just there like just be chill. Just you can do it. So yeah, I know it's funny because of things I've said online previously, but that would be what I'd say for practical advice.
Well, if you're prepared, then you are calm, aren't you?
Hmm.
I can relate to what you're saying with like the exam hall is right there, and there's people that are still reading their notes, like just memorize it quickly before I get
Yeah.
in.
Yeah.
And whereas like you kind of just like turn up and you're like flowing through, and like you're just like common exam
Hey,
paper, what
I
you got?
right. This is going to sound bad, and this is going to probably get clipped out of context. But anyway, me and my mum used to refer to my exams as pub quizzes. Like you, because I would just find it like a bit of fun, just like taking down a few answers, writing an essay, using some flowery language, and like get it done. And I used to quite enjoy them. I know that sounds like fucking nerd. I mean, I am a nerd, but I used to quite enjoy them if I knew what I was doing. But I'll finish with this, and I think we can close up the episode with this kind of idea because I need to go in a sec. But my sports psychologist at uni this year told me this phrase called "train it and trust it." Right? And it's a phrase from snooker, actually, from professional snooker players, because he said professional snooker players being stressed in the moment in a competition is so bad because their skill and what really makes them effective is like really fine-tuned hand-eye coordination. Do you know what I'm saying? So if they're stressed and they're shaking and their pool cues kind of like moving a little bit, they could mess up a basic shot. For that, you need to be calm, you need to be still. And so they have this idea of train it and trust it. You do your hours of work so that when you get into the competition, you can just trust yourself and not be stressed. And obviously my sports psych gave me that advice for basketball. Train enough that you don't have to worry when it comes to competition. You don't even have to be involved. You can just trust that your skills will manifest through your performance. But we can also
Yeah,
think about it academically. Do the work,
yeah.
revise enough so that when it comes to performance time, you can trust it, train it and trust it. Good philosophy for life, I think.
A couple of ideas come to me from MJ DeMarco of um he talks a lot about how time is not equivalent to work like intensity, and how he personally like for my sister who's like spends an hour making her notes look all really pretty, and like you look at it and it does look very nice at my
Hmm.
mum's. That hour could have been spent, like you said, doing like a 20 marker. But no, MJ DeMarco says like his point is about the 9 to 5 and how it's like a 60% negative investment that you sort of you work for you work for 5 days, and then um you chill for 2 days. And he has the philosophy of working really hard at the start to be able to get that freedom. And so um you kind of it's not what it's kind of what you decide to work on that's the really important thing, because you could be this kind of 9 to 5 person, but and you're working as hard as that person that's just started a small business, but there's two very different outcomes. And that you need to that's the really hard thing to think about, is what is really going to move the needle, like you sort of talk about.